and we should be live. Welcome everyone to the third episode of Laravel Internals. My name is Nuno, and today we have the entire Laravel team. Yay! Say hi, everyone.
Hey.
Hey, all.
Yeah, we decided to make this very special podcast because it's Christmas, and because we don't see each other a lot. So we decided to make this with all the entire team together. So today we are going to talk about multiple topics: open source, Laravel EU, Forge, Vapor, Envoyer. But don't hesitate to make some questions in the chat, because at the end or during the live stream, we are going to take some questions from the chat. And let's get started with this. And the first topic of the day is Laravel EU, which is an online conference happening in January, which is the Laravel EU conference. And we have a colleague of mine called Dries is going to do a talk there. So yeah, Dries, could you share with us some details about your talk at Laravel EU?
Definitely. So the topic I'm going to talk about is GraphQL. And the reason why I picked that topic is because I got a chance to really work with GraphQL at my previous job at a SaaS company here in Antwerp at BeatSwitch. We used GraphQL to build an entire new part of the application back then. And it really fitted our use case very well. It's much more explicit in the way you can describe an API or call certain state changes and such. Back then, we were using Doctrine as an ORM, not Eloquent, unfortunately. So we had to use a certain library. I forgot the exact name of the library. But for this talk, for the Laravel YouTube talk, I used a library called Lighthouse, which really fits into Laravel very well. It's directly ties into Eloquent, and it comes with like so much out of the box, which allows you to like really focus on your API specifically and not on like the actual pain points of writing the endpoints and such. So from the experience I had back then at BeatSwitch, it seemed like a really nice topic to talk about, because like not much people are using GraphQL these days, and I just wanted to like have a really quick 30-minute talk about the basics of setting a really practical talk of setting it up, getting started with it, and writing your first GraphQL API. Yeah.
So yeah, in my side, I'm super happy that you are doing that talk, because that subject always sounds complicated to me when I look at it. So I'm happy that you are bringing that topic to Laravel EU. And you at home, don't hesitate to register yourself at this conference, laracon.eu, and this conference is happening in January. So yeah. So next topic is about open source. We do have a lot of this in Laravel. And still with Dries, I know that you have worked a lot in having PHP 8 in the entire ecosystem, but I wanted to know some updates about it. If you have some updates about PHP 8 in the entire Laravel ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, as of just a couple of hours ago, the last final third-party package that was still blocking Nova, I think, has been patched up for PHP, Algolia, their SDK client. And that should be like the final hurdle for us to ship all of our open source stuff and Nova with PHP 8 support. I know Mohammed and James and you have been working very hard on patching Vapor and Forge and Envoyer. So I think like we're all PHP ready now, PHP 8 ready now at Laravel. Yeah.
That's correct. In Envoyer, Vapor, in Forge, we are full ready for PHP 8 since day one. We make it sure of it. And yeah, we are very happy with PHP 8 and also very happy about having all the entire Laravel ecosystem supporting PHP 8. Still about open source, Taylor made a release of Laravel Sail and a brand new documentation. So I know that everyone was super happy about it, but how was the community feedback, Taylor, about those two releases?
The community feedback on Sail has been pretty good, actually. Although I think that Sail and the documentation improvements that I made were really geared for new users to Laravel. So people that have been using Laravel for a while and maybe already have their local development flow kind of figured out the way they like it, whether that's using Valet or Homestead or something else. They may not feel the need to try Sail because they kind of already have a system that works for them. But I think that new people coming into Laravel have now just a better option to get started that's, I don't know, a little bit more robust and ready to go out of the box. And I think the documentation is more kind of streamlined and helpful in terms of how to get started using Laravel. And then also after you install Laravel, kind of what your next steps might be as far as learning goes. And as for the documentation, I originally planned only to write like new onboarding documentation, like installation docs, kind of some of the high level overview docs like request lifecycle. I originally planned just to improve those. But once I got started, I kind of got sucked into the project and just kept going for every page of documentation because I kept coming across stuff that I thought like could be improved or pages that were missing stuff. So that it became like a month and a half long project of working on documentation. But overall, I think it's been a really good change and pretty positive improvements.
Nice, very nice. One question I have to you about this is that, like, if I would wipe my laptop, like just wipe my MacBook, like starting with Sail will be very, very easy, right? I just have to put Docker and just install Sail and everything is ready to go, correct?
Yeah, and that was the goal, was that someone has a fresh laptop or they're fresh out of a coding boot camp or whatever, and they want to try Laravel. I wanted them to be able to get started without worrying about like, you know, is my homebrew installation broken or is it working or what other weird like system problems might I have. Basically, as long as you have Docker, then you can get started using Laravel using just a few simple commands. And then also, you know, you don't have to stress out about like polluting your system with MySQL or Memcached or whatever other things you want to use with Laravel. It's sort of all self-contained within that Docker container.
Nice. And I do feel the pain about that because right now I'm using Redis installed globally. I'm using PHP installed globally. So yeah, very cool Laravel Sail. Also, something that is really cool is that Jetstream, which is released some weeks ago. But I know that you, Taylor, also made some improvements to the documentation, but also about the test suite that comes with Jetstream. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this is all part of kind of the upcoming Jetstream release. So I released Jetstream, I guess, back around whenever Laracon was, back in around August or September. And I've been working on improvements kind of based on the first round of feedback that we got on the first release. Some of the larger improvements were things like team invitations. So right now in the current version of Jetstream, when you invite someone to your team, they have to have an account with the application. But on the next release, if they don't have an account, you can just send them an invitation email and they can accept the invitation, kind of a more typical workflow. And then also we made improvements to kind of the inertia stack by converting all the login and registration pages to inertia when you're using that stack. We made some improvements to accessibility stuff. Let's see, inertia localization. So when you're using the inertia stack, you can localize your front end using the Vue. I guess it's the Vue internationalization package. That's a long word. Yeah, and then the test, like you mentioned, when you installed a Jetstream application before, you didn't get any tests out of the box. So like all the built-in stuff like changing your password or deleting your account, none of that had tests. So you would have had to write them yourself. But in the next release, we actually generate like a dozen or so feature tests that work with whatever stack you're using. So if you're using a Livewire stack, you get some kind of Livewire specific tests. And if you're using the inertia stack, your tests look a little different. But basically all of the features that are included in Jetstream will be tested out of the box so that when you start a new application, you already have some tests ready to go, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about writing those tests. And then also it kind of gives you a starting point or example for how to write your own tests.
Nice, very nice. And same goes with Breeze, right? Because Breeze also ships with a default test suite.
Yeah, Breeze already ships with tests. So I actually just copied and pasted the authentication test from Breeze into Jetstream, and they all passed green because
Nice.
the authentication stuff in Breeze is basically modeled after Jetstream. So then I just had to write tests for the extra stuff in Jetstream that's not in Breeze, stuff like the team stuff, two-factor authentication, stuff like that.
Nice. That makes totally sense. Very nice. All right. Still in the open source topic, I know that Mohamed have made improvements in the Laravel Q component. I wonder if, Mohamed, you can share a little bit about that topic as well.
Yeah, well, last time when I was on the Internals podcast with Dries, I already spoke about the database transaction stuff and the enhancements related to the queue system. So basically, to go over this fast, is that typically before these changes, when you would dispatch a queue job inside a database transaction, the job would be dispatched and it could be picked by a worker before the transaction actually commits. So you will have the worker processing a job that might be interacting with database records that aren't stored in the database yet because the transaction has not committed. So right now, with the latest release of Laravel, you can configure your queue system to store all these dispatches or all these jobs and only dispatch them after any open database transaction have committed. And that way, by the time the job dispatches, the transaction would be committed, and when a worker picks the job, all the records will be ready for the job to be processed. And if the transaction was actually rolled back, the dispatches will be discarded, so no jobs will be pushed to the workers. And that's actually a very good enhancement, because we actually faced this problem while developing a feature on Vapor, if you remember that, Nuno. And that's
Yes, I do.
yeah, that's what actually inspired my effort to fix this in Laravel and make it easier for people to overcome this problem, so it doesn't happen ever again. And another thing that I worked on for the queue system is the ability to encrypt the job payload. So right now, when you're developing and you are pushing jobs to the queue, you might store these jobs in Redis or in a database, and the payload of these jobs is actually quite visible for anyone who have access to the store. So if you are pushing to the database queue and someone has access to the database, he can see the payload of all the jobs. And if you are sending some sensitive information like maybe address of a customer or a phone number, or maybe something even more must be protected, it's quite like it's not very secure to store this data in the database or in Redis or whatever storage driver that you use for your queue system. So we push the ability to encrypt the job payload. All you have to do is to implement an interface on your job, and when the job is dispatched, Laravel is going to automatically encrypt the job payload and store the encrypted version in the queue store. And when the workers pick the job, it's going to automatically decrypt and process the job. So you don't have to worry about the security of your of the system where you store the jobs anymore. And that's actually one of the features that I think was missing from the Laravel queue system. And by having this, I think the queue system is now as secure as any other queue system out there. And another thing that I recently started working on is retrying job dispatches. So for example, if you are pushing to AOS SQS and the service went down for a moment, all these jobs that are going to get dispatched while the service is down will be lost. The user will receive an exception and the job will be lost. So right now we're working, or I proposed a solution for this where the user can configure the queue system to retry pushing if pushing fails. So you can retry it for several times before the system throws an exception. And another feature on top of that is that you can configure Laravel as well to store even if the queue system or the queue storage went down for a longer time, these jobs will not be lost forever. After several retries, you can configure Laravel to store these jobs in a secondary queue, And when the service comes back online, Laravel will automatically push those jobs from the secondary queue to the main queue to be processed. And that's everything I've been working on the queue system for the past few weeks.
Which is a lot. Which is a lot. And I would like to add 2 points on top of that. So, of course, the SQS improvements will be very welcomed in Vapor, and I think every customer in Vapor will be very happy with it. And concerning the transactions improvement in the Laravel queue system improvement, you told me something that is when I was developing that feature on Vapor, you told me when you face a pain using Laravel application, that's an opportunity to improve the framework. So that is something that you probably got that habit from Taylor, of course, but that's really something I save it in my memory to not forget in the future. So very happy with it. All right, so that's it for open source. Let's just grab a question from the chat to close the open source topic. And I was thinking about this one for Taylor, I would say, which is from Roberto, is asking if what is the recommendation to the community if you like to translate strings in your Jetstream application.
It looks like they're asking like where should they share them. I think it would be a good idea actually for someone to make a repository to hold all of those translations. I think someone may have done that with Spark actually. I can't remember for sure, but it's nice if there's kind of one repository that has all of the languages and people can go grab the translation file for their language. Kind of a community hosted initiative, sort of like how there's a website for socialite drivers or whatever. So that would be pretty cool.
All right. Cool. So let's move on to the next topic because we spent 20 minutes in open source. We know that open source is a big part of Laravel, but moving to Envoyer. In Envoyer, I know that James have worked in better source control error handling. I wonder if you would like to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so prior to these changes, one of the common tickets we had and confusions of customers was they'd be trying to deploy a branch that maybe doesn't exist, or a repository that they don't have access to, and Envoy would just bail out and say unable to connect to code provider, which wasn't necessarily true. So I've done a bit of work and we now handle different errors. So you can check if a branch exists or if a repository exists. And we actually try and avoid, for new projects, we try and avoid the ability that event even happening by validating both the branch and repository prior to creating the project. But for older projects, of which there are many, this should now be solved for everybody.
Very nice. And still in Envoyer, you also worked on skipping the deployment steps. Could you talk about that a little bit as well?
Yeah, so on this one, let's say in your deployment plan, you have a step that builds assets, and you only need to do that occasionally. But you need to deploy your website because of a really urgent change. And your asset building step is going to take 10 minutes maybe. You can untick one of the steps that you don't want to run, and it will just skip that on all servers. And I'll let you deploy a lot quicker than before.
All right. Very nice improvements to Envoyer. Congratulations, James. And moving now to Forge, which also received some improvements recently. And one of them, I have actually made that feature, which is automatically email invoices, which is a high requested feature in our support mailbox, which is basically a way of people specifying a list of mail addresses that send the invoice every single month. So right now, what you can do is just go to Forge, to your dashboard of billing. You can enter a list of comma-separated email addresses, and every month, Forge will automatically send the invoice to that list of addresses. Now, people like this feature so much that this morning, James and I just deployed this feature as well in Envoyer and Vapor. So now we have all of this in all products in Laravel.
Yep.
And still about Forge, James, I know that you have worked in copy nginx templates. So in here, I have two questions for you. How was the feedback from the community from having this new feature, nginx templates? And what were...
people have loved... Sorry,
so,
you broke up a little bit then.
Yeah, I was saying that how was the feedback from the community from this new feature, nginx templates? And I also know that you had the possibility of copying those nginx templates. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the community and the customers and such have really enjoyed the nginx templates. They've already created hundreds, even with small modifications, but they improve that customer's particular workflow. It's brilliant. But one of the most requested features, or one of the most requested enhancements for that feature, was to be able to copy them between servers. And we looked at doing it in a couple of ways, because one of the questions we get now is, why can't I have templates on my account level and then just copy them kind of like a recipe? But the issue with that is, if you're using circles on the business plan, then those templates can't be shared that way. So we put them on the server level, and then anybody that has access to the server can create a new site with that specific template. So that solves the problem. And copying them between servers has also been really, really well received as well.
Nice. And also, still in Forge, you also have done some improvements in the databases section. Could you share about that?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time on that particular panel. There's many things. You can now copy a whole connection string that you can import into apps like Table Plus. So the only thing you need to do to connect to your database is copy the connection string and then enter the database password, and then that's it, you're done. What else have we done? Syncing of databases. I think I mentioned this last time, but that's also been improved further. So now, aside from syncing databases into Forge, it will also remove databases that aren't in the that are shown in the Forge database. Databases that are shown in the Forge dashboard that don't actually exist on the server are now removed. So everything is kept in sync. It works both ways.
Yeah, I remember that one special need we had there was that customers actually created databases manually on the server, and we need to kind of import them into in Forge. So that's very nice. Cool, and that's it about Forge. And yet we have tons of new development in Forge, but today we cannot talk about all of them. But we are bringing some kind of the highlights of the recent work. And now moving to Vapor, which in the same way, we have small but big features, and starting with a big one, which was a high requested feature by our customers, which is Docker image support. And Mohamed, I know that you have worked a lot on this one. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Like, one of the main problems when deploying projects on Laravel Vapor currently is that if your application is large in size, like your deployment or your project is large in size, you hit the limits of AWS Lambda very quickly. And to fix this, we introduced the vendor separation feature, where we separately upload the vendor file, including all your package or the packages that your project use. We upload it separately after the container boots up, and that fixes the issue, but it introduced like its own set of problems. And another thing that was quite difficult in using the Lambda runtimes on Vapor is when you want to install extra libraries or extra PHP extensions. To do that, you would have to fork the Vapor runtime and install these libraries or extensions and recompile, and then push your own image and use it for your projects. And it was quite a lot of work. But AWS announced the support of Docker containers for Lambda, and we started working on it right away, actually. And the results are actually amazing. Like, we built a couple of base images that Vapor can use, where they just need to have Docker running, and when they deploy and choose the runtime type as Docker, Vapor is going to automatically build the image and tag it and upload it to AWS container registry and configure the Lambda environment to use it instead of the regular runtime. And this solves the problem with the project size, and also people can configure, or they can modify the Docker files of their projects to install any extra libraries or extra PHP extensions as they want.
Very nice. And just to make sure we talk about this, the only requirement on top of the current requirements in Vapor is that you need to have Docker installed locally, correct?
Yes, you only need to have Docker installed and running, and Vapor will take care of everything else.
Very nice. All right. This is also like a big request from our customers. Very nice. And also in Vapor, we recently announced it, I think it was yesterday, support for Amazon Linux 2. And what is this? So basically today, when you start a Vapor app, what happens is that you need to specify the runtime. And the runtime today is like the PHP version you are using. Behind the scenes, Vapor will use Amazon Linux 1 on top of that PHP version. And what happened now is that Amazon recently announced it, Amazon Linux 2, which is the second version of their operating system that brings optimized performance, but also long-term support, and all of this like with zero additional charges. So recently, yesterday, we just announced support as well on Vapor to this Amazon Linux 2. And the only thing you need to do is just type the PHP version and then suffix with double points AL2, which meaning Amazon Linux 2. And once you do this, you deploy, and normally there is nothing else you need to do. So zero downtime, and you immediately start taking advantage of Amazon Linux 2. One thing to keep in mind is that Amazon Linux 1 will enter in end of life in the end of this year. So after that will be only maintenance support and security fixes, and you will not get like the latest features of their operating system. So something else to keep in mind. All right, so that's it for Vapor, and now let's talk a little bit about future work, and also maybe get some questions from the chat. And for the future work, I do have a question for Taylor because I see Taylor tweet. So I want to ask you, what is the new recording setup you have at the moment? Because we saw like a brand new recording setup, and I wanted to know if you are planning something around that.
Yeah, so I upgraded my recording gear a little bit, mainly because my old audio interface stopped working, so I had to get a new one. And while I was doing that, I added a new channel strip to my audio chain so that I can use the compressor and equalizer, which is like hardware knobs, instead of fooling around in software trying to mess with that. But yeah, my overall plan for that was to try to get back into recording some videos, mainly for the, I don't know if they'll be in the Laravel documentation itself or on some separate space like YouTube, but basically some Laravel tutorial videos to help with the onboarding process of Laravel, and also to kind of demonstrate some of the key features of Laravel, you know, things like routing and dependency injection and Eloquent, and even getting into stuff like Breeze and Jetstream. So just, you know, kind of getting ready to start working on that. I've been kind of thinking through some of the first videos that I'll be making, and hopefully this will kind of improve the quality of those.
All right, so looks like we're going to have our to-do list app on video format.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, cool. Let's grab some questions from the chat before we close this episode today. In a question we have, it's from Mohamed, which is about with a new Lambda option for Docker images, there is a way to SSH into those Docker containers.
Well, the problem is that the container starts and terminates, it's controlled completely by AWS Lambda. So you cannot, like, there is no way actually to pick a container from the containers that AWS starts, and you want to SSH, and you can SSH on it. And that's the problem. So it's not related to whether you're running the regular runtime or the Docker runtime.
Okay, cool. Next question we have, and and maybe after 2 questions we are going to close for today, is what can we expect from Laravel 9? If we can expect something already, because there is a quite few time.
Who's this question for?
Is it for me?
Someone can, Taylor or Dries can take it, I think.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we have a few things.
well,
that, I mean,
I
Dries
think-
worked on
Yeah, go ahead,
Fly
Taylor.
System. Like, was it 2.0 integration into Laravel 9?
Yeah,
So,
2.
like sometimes when we do Laravel versions, we have to also update other libraries we're using. So this was an example of that. Other than that, I mean, we don't have a lot of big stuff so far in Laravel 9, I don't think. I'm looking at my features. So we have Fly System 2. We have lazy loading artisan commands, which this is taking advantage of a new feature in Symfony console, where right now in Laravel 8, when you run an artisan command, we actually instantiate an instance of every single command that's registered with artisan. And it works this way in Symfony because they need those instances to like gather the details of the command so that they know what options are available and stuff like that. But in Laravel 9, it will only instantiate the command that like you're actually running. So it actually probably saves a little bit of memory and execution time because we don't have to instantiate every single artisan command just because, for example, you're running the migrate command. So that's in Laravel 9. There's a few other small things like a make scope artisan command to make an eloquent scope, facade expects, which is related to like facade testing and mocking. I had a few other ideas on my little Notion board. Nuno, me and you have talked a little bit about wanting to explore parallel test execution, kind of like they did in Rails 6. I mean, we haven't really started on that, so who knows if that actually makes it to Laravel 9, but it's something we want to explore. I've also had it on my list to explore this concept of a safe collection, which is related to mass assignment and Eloquent, where right now, when you call mass assignment related methods like create or fill, or you pass an array to like the Eloquent update method, if you pass just an array to that method, then it's obviously going to filter out any attributes that are guarded or whatever. But we've talked about having this concept of a safe collection, where a lot of times it would be really convenient when you have a collection of data that you know is safe, to be able to pass it to those mass assignment methods without stuff getting filtered out. So if you could mark a collection as a safe collection, either through some safe method or a safe helper or something like that, then you could pass it to those methods without worrying about mass assignment protection, because you're basically saying that I'm sort of certifying that this is a safe array of data. So again, I don't know if that will end up in Laravel 9 for sure, but it's something that is on my list of stuff to look at.
All right. Very nice. So thank you so much, Aaron, to being in this episode with us. And I saw a comment in the chat that people really appreciate that we take some time to do this live podcast, and we intend to continue this in next year. So thank you so much. And yeah, see you next time. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Bye-bye.